What's going on? What's going on, family? Welcome back. Welcome back. It's Tuesday again, and we are back here with Becoming One. I'm your host, Marvin Richardson Jr. Thank you so much for rocking with me. I just want to go ahead straight off the bat, say for those who've been watching the replays, I really appreciate it. Feel free to release some feedback. I just realized that I did not allow you guys to make some comments in the chat when you're watching the replay, so you will be able to do that on here as we move forward. Um, I hope everyone had a great Valentine's Day last week. I hope for those that watched the live, I hope that you was doing this in remembrance of me. The husbands know what I'm talking about. Just do it in remembrance for me. And I hope you guys had a great time. I hope you showered your wife. I hope that, ladies, you showered your husband and you made them feel ever special. But like I said last week, Valentine's Day doesn't just end on Valentine's Day. And so Valentine's Day should be every day. Now, I know that's not realistic, especially for those seasoned married folk. You just be like, look, he just better be glad he got some chocolates and some cookie and some snacks and some stuff. Full pun intended on the cookie. But be that as it may, I hope you guys had a great time. But there's still work to be done. You know what I'm saying? So we're not just going to just stop there. Becoming One, the goal is to help you navigate in your relationships and marriage. We want you to become one in Him, with us, and for all. And so I'll say that a lot, and I will continue to say that. I truly believe that God has a plan for marriages. And for those who are on their way to being married, He has a plan for you pre-marriage and while you are in your marriage. And so tonight we're going to talk about loving through the decades. And so if you haven't seen me before, if you haven't watched me before, please take a chance to just start from the first video. At least watch the first video so that you know what I'm about, who I am. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want this to get out to as many people as possible. And feel free to share this with whomever if you think that this is a word that they should hear, or some advice. Sometimes I'm going to say a few scriptures. Sometimes I may not say a scripture at all. I am a believer. No shame in my game. But so a lot of what I'm saying is kind of based and rooted on that, as well as some real life experience. And so I feel qualified to say the things that I'm saying, and wherever I may miss it, hey, it's okay. You make mistakes too. Okay. So let's just get right into this. And again, thanks for joining this live, and let's deal with it. Love through the decades. So in this current times, when it comes to relationships, right, in all facets, the time frame of these relationships, they are becoming fewer and fewer. So whether we're talking about time on your relationship that you have with your job, your relationship with you have with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, relationships you had, of course, with your spouse, your time frame in college. You know, some people, they choose a major and they have a relationship with that major, and then you decide maybe by year one or by year two, like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. True story, I was studying architecture and I was on my way to becoming an architect as a non-traditional student. For those people who don't know what that is, a non-traditional student is when you go back to school and you're much older. So I was the older guy in the room. And so after my first year in architecture school, I thought about it, and then I actually did a shift. And so my relationship with the coursework shifted from becoming an architect to becoming a construction manager, which is now what I do. And I do like it a whole lot. And so, but in a lot of things, and a lot of our pursuits or things that we're pursuing, the time frame by which we decide to stay with something is actually becoming shorter and shorter. The gap of staying power that people have in relationships continue to get smaller and shorter. You know, the lifespan of people at churches is maybe between 3 to 4 years, and then they out of there. Whether it's God shifted them, they get offended, or God just really just moving them on to something different, which is fine. But the time frame just seems to be shorter. When it comes to jobs, people are not staying at jobs for decades anymore. There may be 3 to 5 years at best. And then once something else comes along, you know, they send a little email. I wish to announce my resignation from here. And so it's amazing that not just where I work, but where you work, people are transitioning. And then sometimes jobs do lay people off. But I'm talking about the aspect where people are leaving, and they're fleeting. They're leaving a pursuit. And it's amazing how when you first get into a pursuit, it just seems like, man, this is the best job I've ever had. the best job. I will never see myself leaving. And then when your moment comes, then you're like, I'm just not feeling it anymore. And here's a nugget. This is not on the notes, but when it's time to leave, when things just irritate you. It's not the same for marriage. So do not say that Marvin Richardson Jr. said, yeah, when I'm starting to feel some type of way about my husband, he's starting to irritate me, it's time to leave. No. In some instances where God is really taking you from one step to the next, if you've kind of outgrown that, then you start to feel that there needs to be a shift or a transition. Sometimes your shift is actually at the job that you're at. Sometimes the shift is somewhere else. That's your job to really find out. It is the what is it? It is the glory of God to conceal a marriage, the glory of kings or queens to search it out. So search out what you need to search out and move accordingly. But since we're talking about love through the decades, I want to contend for you having a relationship that lasts decades. You know what I'm saying? And so typically when people get married, there's the saying, till death do us part, right? Well, we know that's not always the case. Sometimes it's not till death do us part. Sometimes, and I've said this before, it's till unhappy do I leave. You know what I'm saying? Or, I'm just not feeling her anymore. We just have grown apart, or whatever the case may be. You've heard the relationship reasons why people leave a relationship. And so sometimes I would say this is another lie for another day, but that's more so a contract mindset versus a covenant mindset. If you're doing covenant, it's supposed to be till death do us part. Now, there's no marriage in heaven. So you would think that maybe, let me get this thing right on this side of heaven, because on that side of heaven, there's not going to be any marriage. It's just going to be you, the Father, and millions upon millions of people from different times of the world living there, existing. People don't think about that. Another topic for another day. So let's talk about the data, right? So, after all, they say almost 50% of first marriages, unfortunately, end in divorce. And then 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. Now, those statistics do not seem good. So what about you and your spouse can you do to defy the odds? You definitely need to be aware of this statistic. You must be aware that your day will come too where your relationship will be tried. Your relationship will be tested, or let me rephrase it. You will be tried. You will be tested. There's going to be something going on inside of you that's kind of making you think, maybe this is not for me. Maybe this is not serving me. Now, what I'm not talking about is the reasons for divorce, which I'm about to get into in a minute. But thinking of those stats is staggering. So that if there were 10 people in the room that got married, 5 of those marriages and sometime later will not make it. And that's a tragedy because, of course, God hates divorce. I saw Dr. Miles Monroe say in a video about how people should choose to stay married, and not, God never intended for the husband and wife to be divorced, because it's not so much about the marriage itself, but it's also about the seed. It's about God producing godly seed. And it's not just the two individuals that comes under attack. It's the destiny of the child, because it so affects the child negatively that it causes a lot of damage that is not sometimes irreparable, or it's going to take them a long time to kind of get over it. So for y'all first marriage people, you want to fight and contend for what you have. And if not, then you will be a part of the 50%. I would hope that it's not. I would hope that you decide that you're not going to be that. Now, for those of you who have already known my story, I am currently divorced. It has happened for me twice, but I still believe that God has a plan for my life. And if God sees fit for me to be married in the future, I'm doing it with more information of what I've learned in those years of marriage that I get to take going forward. And so I'm not here to beat up anybody who's been divorced. I'm here to encourage you that you want to set your mind to love someone through the decades and not just through the moments. More on that later on. And so the stats are the stats, right? But if you let the statutes stand, meaning God's statutes, then the stats mean nothing to you. What is a statute, right? A statute is a rule or a rule of organization by an institution. We think about marriage. Marriage is an institution. It's a covenant. It's all these different things. However you view marriage, and the statutes within that will determine your behavior. So if you're in a to death do, if you have a mindset of until unhappy do I leave, you're gonna bounce. If you have a mindset of this is not working for me, you're gonna bounce. If you have a mindset of I didn't sign up for this, check that live, you're gonna bounce. Okay. So the mind matters in all things. So let's briefly talk about why divorces happen. Obviously, adultery, that happens. Even though if adultery happens, I don't still have to divorce. You can work it out. God can heal, but that's another life. Hardness of heart. I mean, there was a story in the Bible where they actually asked Jesus about divorce. And Jesus said, it wasn't like this in the beginning. He says, but because of the hardness of your heart, they were permitted to divorce. Because back then, men was just recklessly saying to women, look, you know what? I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. They would say it 3 times, and it's like they would literally divorce the lady. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like her cooking. I divorced you 3 times. You too fat. I divorced you 3 times. Now the women couldn't do that. Now women have power in these days that say, you know what? I divorced you. And it happens, and it's happening in record numbers. Another reason, bitterness. Another reason, irreconcilable differences. That's the number one, at least here in the Western civilization, number one, probably reasons for it. And so irreconcilable differences is pretty much saying I'm wrecking and I don't want to reconcile. You get that? I wreck and I don't want to reconcile. Now, here we go. I know some of my naysayers say, yeah, but you don't understand. Sometimes things happen. Yeah, I get that. I'm not coming for that. I'm just saying that sometimes people got to really ask themselves, is it really irreconcilable? Or is it that your heart has become so hardened that unless God Almighty changes your heart and your mind, it's going to end. Now, I'm not telling any woman or man to stay in an abusive relationship. But what I am saying is that there's still a possibility for you to love through the decades, even during hard moments. Okay. So I'm contending for your marriage. If you're having a hard time, I'm contending for you right now that you would just really think twice about a decision that you make that is going to have eternal implications. And what I mean by eternal is consider this when you stand before God, when this is all said and done, do you want to be sure that this decision was the best decision? Now, will God send you to hell for divorcing? No, he won't. But you want to be able to have a conversation knowing that you did everything on this side of heaven to fight for it, to contend for it, and to make it. And if it doesn't happen, God will forgive you. He'll move on. He'll bless you for it, all the whole 9 yards. Finances is another reason. Dave Ramsey said, the leading cause for divorce in North America is money fights and the money problems. And I agree with him. It is, but it is not the only one. There's many others. And if you're going to love through the decades, you have to be intentional about making sure that these things that I've already listed does not take your marriage. And if you're in a dating situation, you want to have some conversations now to say, hey, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle that? What is going to be our approach to this relationship that we're going to do? You know what I'm saying? And so, and the last thing, you can figure out any other reason why people divorce. Somebody might divorce somebody because they think their cat is ugly, or their dog farts, or the dog has funky breath, or maybe you got funky breath and you need to go to the dentist, and they're just like, oh my God, like, I don't want to kiss you. Just please keep your lips away from my mouth. Or maybe you got BO, body odor, and you got to handle that. In any case, in this day and age, people are divorcing folk left and right. Okay. And so I want to focus on what to do and not what to stop. I want to focus on what to do and not so much at the point when you decide to stop in the marriage. And so if you're going to love through the decades, that requires you to not many make, it's not going to require you to make many major decisions, right? You make one major decision and you just have to reinforce it, right? John Maxwell will talk about how there's not many major decisions he makes. He makes a major decision, and then all his decisions beyond that is just reinforcing that one decision. And so in your marriage, first you must decide to love through the decades. And it's not just in the moments. You know what I'm saying? Moments, what is a moment? A moment is comprised of minutes, hours, days, moments. You have vacation moments. You have graduation moments. You know what I'm saying? You have days where you have honeymoon that happens over days. You take tests that takes hours. You study. Those are moments, right? But decades is comprised of days, months, and years. And of course, we know a decade is 10 years. How are you going to get through 10 years? Thank you, Holy Spirit. And so if you think about college in relationships, you think about college in year 1 to year 4, you're like going through the bachelor's. You're going to do your bachelor's degree of marriage, right? And if you decide, and if you go to get your master's, that's another 2 years. So you've been married 7 years. By the time you get to 7 year, hopefully some things are perfected. And if you decide to go through a doctoral program, that's another potentially 2 years. When you finally get to your eighth year, eighth or ninth year, you're actually focusing and writing your dissertation. Now, I've never been to grad school, so I don't quite know the whole ins and out of it. But in any case, if you imagine in your marriage, you go through 4 years of learning to get your bachelor's, 2 years of learning to master yourself and master the marriage. And then you can get to go into a doctoral level of understanding your husband or your wife. And can you imagine knowing them on that level? Can you imagine knowing them biblically, where you understand how to pray for them and you can pray for them decades ahead? There's some people that I know, they do this thing called the Pray for Your Future Spouse Challenge. And when they do that, they're actually challenging people to pray for their spouse ahead of when they actually meet them. Now, how great is that to know that you prayed for your spouse before you even met them? That's a major, that's amazing, because it's so possible that you could be sending prayers that's orchestrating and helping their life, and you haven't even been joined to them yet. Now that's powerful. Now, the same way that we can pray for our children's future, you can pray for your spouse's future. You're praying for the decades ahead. So let's be intentional about praying for the decades, not just the moments, okay? So some of these decisions you got to make, some of these things you want to do, is you want to make up your mind before you dedicate your time. Excuse me. You want to make up your mind before you dedicate your time. There is nothing worse than spending time with someone, investing your time with someone, and then it doesn't work out. You know how some of the movies, and in some situations with your girlfriends, she dated a guy for a certain amount of time, it doesn't work out. She's like, I gave him everything. I gave him everything. I gave him my soul. Yeah, all of that stuff, right? No, you gave him time. Maybe it was 1 year's worth of time, 2 years worth of time, 4 years worth of time, 10 years worth of marital time. Yes, you did give up some time. So you want to make up your mind how you're going to go into this thing before you decide to give a person your time. And whatever the outcome in the future, hopefully you're still together. You can look back and still be with that person that says, you know what? These past 7 years have been worth it. I'm so glad I said yes to you. I'm so glad. And I'm so glad we were intentional from day one to make sure that this thing was going to be good to go all the way through until death do us part. Another thing is, remember, it's not about you, but it's about bringing glory to God. I think this is one of the things that really tears marriages up, is when you start to think about I this, me that. When you start thinking I over us, you in trouble. When you start thinking of me over we, you in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that as a husband or wife, you should not pursue the things that you feel that you should pursue, but you have to remember, wait a minute, it's us crossing over, not I crossing over. Now, when you're single, the Bible is clear that the affairs of those that are single is for the Lord. It is, as Dr. Conway Edwards would say, it is the preferred life, because you can navigate in life and do the will of God, pursue the things you want to pursue, and you don't have a person that you have to consider. But when you're married, it says your efforts are divided. You must first see how you can please your spouse and then the things of the world. And so you got to remember that whether you're single or married, your life is supposed to bring glory to God. And not to be preachy, God did buy you with a price. And so you're supposed to glorify God with your body. So whether you're single or married or somewhere in between, you're about to get married, you're supposed to be glorifying him and how you handle your life that he gave you. You know what I'm saying, fam? So the next one, in the beginning, you want to make a decision to stay as long as it depends upon you. Now, scripture says, as long as it depends upon you, make every effort to be at peace with someone. And also, blessed are the peacemakers, right? So when you arguing with your wife, and y'all just not seeing eye to eye, at some point, one of you need to decide to make some peace. One of you need to choose to extend an olive branch. You know, say, hey, sweetheart, you know, I don't like it when we're like this. And sir, if you are 2% of the problem. Own that 2% like it's the whole 100. Say, babe, you know what? This is me. This is my fault. Now, even if she's wrong, she's flat wrong, still. At some point, come on, are you going to keep letting the sun go down on your anger? Are you going to keep doing that? Are you going to have a war of attrition? I ain't going to speak to you. I ain't going to speak to you either. And we just both going to have cold butts facing each other, knowing that y'all want to hug each other, but you just being stubborn. You're wasting time, fam. You're wasting time. You must decide that you're going to make it to the end by your will and God's grace. Is this marriage thing easy? Absolutely not. It will be one of the hardest things that you have to do because you're loving another human being who is imperfect. You are choosing to love someone when they don't deserve it. Chip Ingram said, loving someone is choosing to give them the love they need the most when they deserve it the least at personal cost to you. It's going to cost you. Now, this is what you don't have a problem loving like that. Your children. You will love your children with an unconditional love, but your spouse, when they desire for the love, you will give them a stone. Don't let that be you. Decide to let the Holy Spirit work something in your heart so that you can love differently, love like he loves. And if you do that, you're making loving through the decades a whole lot better. You're making it easy. You're making it easy like Sunday morning. You know what I'm saying? Another one is plan for tomorrow, but be content in your today. If you're thinking so far into the future that you're not living in your today, then you're missing it. There's nothing worse than thinking about 5 years from now and you're not even thinking about right now. So for the mothers and fathers, for you got little ones, I remember my mother used to say this, and not because she didn't want to have kids. She would just say, man, I just feel like my kids is never going to get old. They're going to be babies forever. That's what my mom said. And before she knew it, we were 10 years old. And then we were 15 years old. And then I'm graduating high school. And then I'm off to college. And she's just like, man, you guys have grown up so fast. It's like life went that fast in a blink. So when we were babies and we were, you know, those baby cries when they cry. And it's like, they have that real funny looking face. And the mom is just like, look, I'm tired. I just need to sleep. And this baby is keeping me up all night. And you start to feel like, am I ever going to get through this season? Yeah, before you know it, that season will be over. There will be no more diapers to change. Voices will change. Bodies will grow. Hormones will fly. And next thing you know, they get ready to graduate high school. Next thing you know, they graduate in college. Next thing you know, they get married. You're just like, what happened? And you say, wait a minute, slow down, slow down. You're growing up too fast. I looked at my 16-year-old son. I said, I'm not ready. Like, man, he was just this small, you know, sitting on my shoulders. And now he's 16 going on 17. Like, where did the time go? I don't know. So, to my point, plan for tomorrow, but be content in your today. Next thing, love and life cycles and seasons. So there's going to be cycles, right? You know, the cycle of life, there's always going to be a beginning, middle, and an end. And then something starts again, and then something starts again, and then something starts again. So we always have, you know, a cycle of a year. The year goes January to December. In seasons, you want to think about what that looks like. So in most marriages, you have the early years. You know, you get married, you hump like rabbits, and you're doing it and doing it and doing it well. And then the babies come. And then now you're not able to just quite do it whenever you want, however you want. You got to kind of finesse through that. You're dealing with babies, and the baby is, you know, the baby wants mommy's attention and daddy wants wifey's attention. And somehow in that, there's sometimes a friction. One person feels neglected and one person feels like you don't understand. And the other person is like, oh, really? You want to do it now? I mean, I just put the baby asleep. So you got to navigate through that and understand that in your early years of marriage, it's just a season. Eventually, you won't have to watch their every move. Eventually, you won't have to put little plugins in the walls and those little plastic things on the cabinet. So when the kid tries to open the cabinet, they can't get it because there's a little brace on it. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. The baby years require understanding and compromise. And you got to be careful. Here's the one. You got to be careful that you don't become so career driven that in that season that you actually miss out on those younger years. There are countless and countless of people who have ran after career and they miss their child's childhood. And when the child gets old enough to start doing their own thing, you're not part of their life. That's the hurtful thing. There is no grandmother or grandfather or mother or father who has grandkids that don't want to brag about it. So, back in the day, because I was born in the 70s, families used to have wallets with a whole bunch of pictures in it. You have a leather wallet and you just have all of these pictures. And, you go to the family events and they just taking out all the pictures. Here's all of my grandkids. And it's like, whoop. Now it's just the phone. Now they just flipping it, flipping it, flipping it, flipping it, flipping it. And it's the phone, right? You're seeing different pictures of your children. You're just so happy. And as a grandparent, that's your pride and joy. That's what makes you popular. Oh, my daughter, she's this. And my son is doing that. And now they got these kids. All these different things. But if you miss out on those earlier years, then you won't be a part of their adult years. So let that be a caution to you, okay? Love them through their decades. Let me move on. In the seasons and cycles of life, there's going to be transitions. You're going to change. Your husband's going to change. Your wife going to change. Somebody's going to get bigger. Somebody's getting smaller. Somebody's going to get big and small. Teenagers are going to grow up. They're going to have hormone changes. You're going to have job changes. You're going to have focus changes. You're going to have ministry desire changes. You're going to have life changes. You're going to have sexual changes. You're going to have friendship changes. They're going to be people that you're going to know today that you may not know tomorrow. You're going to have deaths in family and beyond. It's going to be all these different things, right? But love's still supposed to remain. So as these things happen, you must focus and you must choose to align with each other. If you're going to love through decades, you must choose to align with each other. Think about it. Sit down with your husband or your wife and say, let's talk about the decades to come. This is year 7. Let's talk about what's going to happen between year 10 and 20. You can have a conversation. You can pray forward about the second decade of your marriage, not just be reactive. So that when you're reactive, then people say things like, I didn't sign up for this. No, you actually did. But you wasn't proactive. Now you're being reactive in a season that you had no idea was coming. And now that it's there, you have to deal with it. And usually it's in those difficult times where the desire to do that is great. I hope you hear me. So this alignment should not be based on selfishness. It should be based on service. How can I serve you? Jimmy Evans said, the greatest marriages is 2 servants in love. I'm going to serve you. No, I'm going to serve you better. No, I'm going to serve you better. I'm going to serve you better. And then it just becomes this competition of serving the other person. And you can be like, yep, husband 5, wifey 2. She'd be like, okay, I'm going to take care of that. And then she just serves you differently. She then comes home with your favorite little candy snack. She's like, point for me. And she comes home and rubs your back, point for me. Or she rubs your head, point for me. And before you know it, she done upped your points. And then knowing you husbands, you're going to give her double points because of how she chooses to love you. Or the simple things is, you telling your wife, look, I not only got the trash, but I actually cleaned the house today. She'd be like, oh, what? Baby, you ain't got to wash the dishes. Matter of fact, don't cook tonight. I know you was going to cook, but I already bought dinner. There it is at the table. He loves me. Right. Especially when they're children. You know what's going to make your wife feel so supported, especially during the years where there's children? When you just take the burden off of her. Any chance you get, say, hey, where the baby? Give me the baby. Give me the baby. That's what I did when my boys, I came home from work. Where he at? Come here, buddy. And he would just stay with me, say, go take a nap, go watch a movie, go do something. Just do you. Do whatever. That's loving a person through the decades, loving through the season and cycles. Okay. I'm not telling you stuff just to say it. This is some stuff that I've lived and some stuff that I've actually witnessed. In construction, there's a term called cradle to grave. And so if you're loving someone through the decades, you understand that you're going to have cradle moments and grave moments. Some things are going to start, some things are going to end. Some things are going to start again, and some things are going to end. And so some things are birthed and some things die, right? And it's okay. That's cool. That's all a part of life. You and your wife will be transitioning through life, and the only thing that'll be constant is the two of you. The only two of you. And so, and another thing is just to remember that as things change, approach it with grace, approach it with understanding, approach it with love. The greatest of these things, faith, hope, but the greatest of these is love. That's how you love through the decades. You factor in the fact that there's a way that I can show up in this. And although I may not feel my best, I still can choose to love better today than I did yesterday, right? And you have some challenges. You may need to heal from some things. Heal better. Yeah. Then you'll live better. You know what will happen? You'll love better. As I close, consider this. Man's days is different from God's days, right? The word says that the day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is in one day. Basically, God is not in the realm of time. We are. I am in the realm of time. Like right now, it is showing 8:02 because I live in Central. Some of you are watching in Eastern or West Coast. But I'm dealing with the realm of minutes and then hours, right? And then days. God is not in the realm of time. Your marriage, your relationship, in the beginning, it may seem like a day is like 3 minutes. Years may seem like a week. Depending on the condition of the relationship, things fly by. Things are flying by so fast. And that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before you know it, it's like, wait a minute. We've been married 6 years? Wait a minute. We've been married 13 years? Wait a minute. We just hit 20? How? I remember in year 17, I was like, bro, I'm about to leave you. I'm about to make you a single man. I'll make sure you have some money, but I'm about to be done. Some of you brothers the same way, man. I'm gonna give me a little young chick, man. I'm gonna give me a little young woman. I can't deal with this wife. She's just not, you know what I'm saying? I just don't understand. No, bro, you missing it. You missing it. Your wife gets fine like wine over time. And if the condition of how she is, if you're experiencing something that you don't like, 9 times out of 10, it's probably because of you. And I don't say that to beat you down, brother. I just say that there's something in the way that you've shown up that has created the person of who she is, right? So whatever you have planted her in and however you watered her or have not watered her, potentially is why you're getting the experience that you have. Wives, that goes for you too. Is your husband experiencing bullets as a result of your mouth? You're the only person on the planet that can speak to him and make him feel like the king of the world, but you're also the one that can make him feel like crap. Think about it. How many decades have you guys gone thus far? Have you reached a decade? And do you want the next decade to be like this? If so, it doesn't start with changing him or her. It starts with changing you, becoming one with him. Let him change you so that as everyone experiences you, their experience of you is one that's like, wow, she's so loving. Wow, he's so caring. Wow, I remember how they were. And when they look at your marriage, it's just like, that's what I want. That's relationship goals. Everybody can have good relationship goals. Everyone can be an example. You just got to choose it. And every marriage is different. Your marriage is not going to look like anybody else's marriage. So stop the comparison. So what? They can get to go on 5 vacations a year. What if you just go on 2 vacations and it's on and popping? You have the best memories ever. And when the kids grow up and you have the babies around and all your children will do is talk about the great times they had with you. And we were happy. That's what they will say. We didn't go that many places, but we were happy. You can create a culture within your family such to the point where it creates memories that when you go to the home to be with the Lord, they'll look at you and they'll say, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They'll be sad, but they'll be like, thank you. That's the legacy you want to leave when it's till death do us part. When you stand there at your casket, whether your wife has passed away or the husband has passed away, you want them to look at you and say, thank you. I love you. I'm going to miss you, but thank you. And all they have after they've buried you is the positive memories that you've left. And they'll have moments where they sitting rocking in a chair, and they'll be thinking about you. My father does it now because my mom has already gone home to heaven, but they'll think of you and they'll be like, I remember when my father calls my mother his sunshine, the sweetest thing. He was there when she went home to be with the Lord. And I remember him saying to her, I love you. I love you. That's loving through the decades. I'm one that believes that, there's a saying that they don't make them like they used to in terms of husbands and wives. I believe that they do. I believe that you are that person. I believe that you may want to be that person and you probably feel like, I'm not as best. I'm not as good as I can be. But you know what? You can. I want to encourage you that you can. You can love that person through the decades. And whatever comes, doesn't matter. You're going to choose to love them. And maybe you didn't make up your mind when you first got married. You can make up your mind today. You can make up your mind that, you know what? I'm going to go all the way. There's a song like that. I'm going all the way. I'm going all... Okay. I'm showing my church history stuff. I'm a church boy. I was also, I did a whole lot of stuff in my BC days, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But you can go all the way. So if you don't remember anything, so I hope you remember this, that God created you and he's been journeying with you for decades already. God has already been loving you through the decades. You see that? How old are you? 25, 35, 45, 55? Think about how many decades is within your age range and just recognize that he's been walking with you. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, even if you didn't even accept him yet. Even if you've only accepted him 3 years, 10 years ago, and it's been kind of rocky, God has been walking with you through these decades. He's been walking with you. There's this little picture that I've seen, and it has footprints, and then it's two sets of footprints, and then at one point you see one set of footprints, and it says at the end of the picture that the moments when you only saw one set of footprints, God was saying, that is when I picked you up and I carried you. Are you in a season right now where there's only one set of footprints in the sand? If so, I would submit that maybe God is carrying you. In your marriage, God could be carrying both you and your spouse. Where there would be 3 sets of footprints, there may just be one. And sometimes, wife, woman of God, you may have to carry your husband. Sometimes, husbands, you may have to carry your wife. But just know that when you're carrying them, God is carrying you. Okay? Yeah. So God's love has gone with you through the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know what I'm saying? He's been there. He's been loving you through the decades. And so he doesn't expect you to be like him, but he hopes that you will walk like him. He hopes that you will live like him, and he hopes that you will love like him. As you connect to him, becoming one with him, then everything else falls into place. How has God loved you through your decades? Think about that. How has he loved you in such a way that you're like, man, his love and his mercy endures forever. But you can trace moments in your life where you're like, if it was not for God, man, this happened, and oh God came to the rescue. You know what I'm saying, family? How you start has a major impact on how you're going to navigate these next few decades to come. I would encourage you to not be until unhappy do I leave, but until death do us part when it comes to your marriage. And contend for it. Do what you need to do. Get counseling, go to God, get the help you need so that the two of you guys can be better for each other, so that you can make it through the decades. And why? Because you're going to bring God glory through that. And it's possible that he wants to say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Come and share your master's happiness. Sir, you loved her well. You loved your wife like I love my wife. He'll say your name, whatever your name is, such and such. You loved your wife like I loved my wife. It wasn't easy. And you can have conversations now with God about how you're loving your bride. And he can say, yeah, I understand, because my bride don't be acting right either. And I got to love her through it, And then for wives, the same thing. You love your husbands or respect your husbands, as the word says, but love him. Love him. God knows how to get to him. He sees your tears and he will handle him. But God's desire is always that it was good and it was going to work for your good. He declares the ending from the beginning in all things. He's already said you two will be successful. He's already said that. So just walk in it. But if you allow yourself to be contaminated with the culture of the world, you won't walk in it. So walk in what he's already said. Believe what he has said and live what he has said in him, with us, for all. I hope that this was good for you tonight. Please share this with whomever that you think would be blessed by this. Do it, and I would appreciate it. And I will see you guys. I will see you next week. I don't know how, but Lord knows how. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Thank you so much for being with me. And go out there and love your spouse well. Okay. I'll see you guys next week. God bless.